Okay, this is kind of my first, fairly high dollar review that I'm doing on here. And this is a PE Pacific Energy Summit Series Fireplace Insert. And I kind of wanted to share with you my experience of the unit a little bit, but even more so, the experience of customer service and working with the dealer if you happen to have a problem with one of these things. So you can probably glean from my my voice that I'm not too tickled pink with my my $5,000 fireplace insert that I've used for one season. And kind of getting into that, and by the way, if you're thinking about buying one of these things, hold off and don't cut that big old check right now is my advice to you, and listen up to my 10-minute little recap here. But the unit itself is engineered pretty well, I do believe. They're built solid, they're built nicely, and they do more or less what's claimed. But the kicker here is, if these things aren't installed right by a competent dealer, you're never going to get their full potential out of this, and that's where the rub comes in here. Where I'm in California, we don't even really get that cold, quite honestly. And we've only got one dealer in our area that does the wood burning stuff. And I'm not going to get into naming names. I don't really believe in kind of trash talking people. But long story short, when this thing got installed, we basically disagreed on the performance that we should be getting out of this. And the way that it was installed was not exactly what I'd call a top-notch install here. It was a slam job, give me my money and shut up kind of a thing. So basically, I used a recourse and I got my money back for the install, but I did pay for the unit. So at least that part worked in my favor here. And if you're the dealer, you're going to know who you are. You're going to know who I am, I can promise you, but we won't get into that. Nobody said any bad words here, but we both kind of stood our ground on this thing. So I'm kind of having a customer service part where I call up, explain what's going on. Clearly, I don't want the same dealer to come back and correct the issue, which I'll get to in a little bit. There's a few of them. And basically, I talked to Pacific Energy. Oh, there's no phone number. They don't list a phone number. They don't want their customers calling them with customer service issues. Okay. So I call their distributor. They point over to that distributor on our West Coast, and they don't really want to hear from the customer either. So after I call and basically beg and plead and do all these other things after buying this fancy $5,000 unit, I finally get to one person, and guess what they do? They don't call me back after explaining the situation. They call the dealer that I said expressly I don't want working on this thing, and the guy tells me you have to call your dealer. I said, I don't want to talk to my dealer. That's the whole point of the exercise. Would you hire a contractor to come back that seriously botched the job and you've taken kind of legal recourse? No, of course not. So, long story short, I go through the distributor, a second person in the distributor, a third person in the distributor. Nobody's going to ever let you talk to Pacific Energy. So finally I go, okay, I guess I have no choice, but I have to email Pacific Energy. I email them, explain the situation in detail. They send me back one simple thing that, a couple cookie cutter responses. Maybe your door's not right. Check your wood. Is it dry? Yes, it is. It's 2-year-old wood. We have lots of almond wood out here. It burns extremely well. And I have friends that are burning the same wood in different stoves, and they're having wonderful results. So we're eating up lots of wood. This thing is rated for a house that's like 3,000 to 4,000. We're half that, and it's not heating it. Not even coming close. So, and we're in California. We're not even in like Alaska or anything. I mean, this thing is so underperforming, it's ridiculous. So, anyways, you get some standard, piecemeal answer. And guess what Pacific Energy does? They call the dealer. And they go over it with the dealer. And the dealer tells them blah, 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 blah. I'm sure whatever his side of the story is. They don't even call the customer. Nobody calls the customer to hear what the other side of the complaint is. Everybody jumps on the dealer's side without even giving you a chance to explain your situation. So as far as I am concerned, oh, and well, we did a few emails back and forth, but the problem is every time you email them, it takes 2 weeks to get a response. And then by the time you go back and forth with this thing, it's so maddening that finally you happen to do what I do, is I just said, forget it, I give up. I'm going to get some friends, we're going to pull this thing out. I've ordered the piece, and I'm just going to fix this myself. It's not even worth it, which is probably exactly why they have it engineered this way. And I can tell you one thing, I will never buy another Pacific Energy again. And I think I'm getting a little bit too off the topic here. But what really irritates me is I've gotten better customer service getting a jumbo jack taco that maybe could use some more lettuce than this thing, which cost as much money as it did. I emailed them 3 or 4 times. They never called anybody back. If you could have gotten through to a English speaking person that understands their own product, this all could have been rectified in probably 5 minutes. But nope, it drug on for months of email. No help from the distributor level. Everybody just wants to take your money and kick you down the road if you have a problem. And I said, okay, well, I have a problem with this dealer. There's nobody else around here within basically about 100 miles, so I have a real problem with that. So hypothetically, what happens if the dealer goes out of business? That does happen. And they won't refer the work out to an independent Chimney person, which is one of the bigger problems. We have 3 or 4 other people around our area, and some of them are highly reputable, and I wish I kind of went with one of them. I just liked the Pacific Energy was my problem. I zeroed in on this, and I didn't really consider the dealer aspect too much. So they will not work with a third-party person. It has to be one of their own dealers. I can't send the part over. They don't even want to work with Pacific Energy, and I don't really blame them. On the business level, it's horrible. So even if you're a certified technician, that deals in low-pi or whatever popular brand might be out there, you're a certified tech, they won't let you do any of the work. So I have to pay some guy to drive 100 miles over here to work at this thing, which I might do. But even if the person goes out of business, I said, isn't that a valid request? I mean, some of these people do go out of business. You can't work with a different third party to just replace some of these things. Nope, never going to happen. So I don't know what these people do in these real remote areas. I asked them if they could send the part over to me as the customer and I take care of it. Nope. So they have you in a box and they like to keep you in that box, and there is no way out. So as far as customer service for Pacific Energy goes, I'm going to refer to my buddy, the bar soap guy, and I'm going to let him give you his review aspect. As far as customer service goes, it's awful. But on the plus side, I can tell you about the unit itself. I do think is pretty good. My problems, like I said, are the install. So first thing is, when these guys were installing it, they broke a couple of bricks, the corners on here. Yeah, okay, you're working with stuff. That happens. This piece, I don't know if anybody knows, goes underneath the firebox down there what the lever is. If you're doing an indoor installation, you have to remove this. Otherwise, the fireplace doesn't breathe properly. Did he remove that? Nope, he didn't even have a clue what it is. It says right in the instruction manual, remove this or it won't function right. Okay, see this gap here? My fireplace is like tilting in. It's leaning in and it's lifting out on the front. And while I'm in this area, see that knob over there? That is for your automatic thermostat control. That this is supposed to kick on and off and regulate itself so the fireplace works at an optimum temperature, say, I don't know, 450 degrees, where you're not making creosote and you bleed off the temperature, and if it cools it off a little bit too fast with the fan, it turns off, lets it warm back up, and then it starts siphoning heat off again. Nice feature, right? Well, it doesn't work. And I called up and I said, I called a different dealer in an area. The one thing I could do was make a phone call. And the guy said, yeah, you have to hook up the wires in the back for the probe to work. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And I go, oh my God. So once again, you know, that's the main rub with this install, is the dealer didn't know that you have to hook this plug up in the back for that piece to actually work and regulate the stove. So the only way to get at that, of course, is you have to remove the whole entire unit, drag it all out, disconnect the chimney. Big deal. It's a little $20 part, but the labor is horrendous. And while I'm over here, when you put these things together, that's got a gap on it. It didn't fit that in right. The door you can't possibly screw up. You just drop it in on 2 hinges. And over here, I've got a rattle, so I have to put like a fork in here to space that out. But the thing is set in wonkus. It's sucked in. If you look at it, it's touching in the corners, so it's actually sucked in this way, plus it's lower in the back. So it's basically bent. I don't know what you call this thing, I don't know, the trim or whatever. It's got a big old gap in the front, which I can kind of live with that. I'm not huge in cosmetics. I'm more after performance. And the one thing I can tell you about this unit is I do love the firebox. It is awesome. I'm cleaning this thing out right now at the end of the season, so I scooped out all the ashes, and then after it, you know, cools down for a good, you know, week, I even wait 2 weeks, then I get a household vacuum and I vacuum all this stuff out. And in case you're wondering, there's air injectors in here that you can flip the vacuum in and suck out some of that soot underneath this plate. But the firebox is awesome. These things, I'll give these a humongous thumbs up. Every single one of those things is consistent. I've got 3 of them. The one in the middle is a little discolored because the hot air comes out. But those things are right on the money. I've checked them with an IR gun. They are killer. Every single one of them works great. But the whole idea is, if it wasn't for these things, I'd had no idea where I'm burning. Because you want to keep the temperature in that upper range where it says optimum. So that's what the fan is supposed to do, is keep it in there. When I turn on my fan, I may as well have it in manual mode. I'll wake up in the middle of the night, it's supposed to be in auto, or the morning, and I'll come out here, there's barely any coals in here, and the fan's been running all night long. So it cools it down so much, it's basically gonna put creosote in my chimney. So that is basically the big grumble here, guys. The fans are quiet. The unit is nice. I have one tip for you. This little damper, you only have one control at the bottom. Once you get it going, if you slide it over, you have kind of a lot of unburnt coals in there in the morning. I mean, it's embers, and you can kind of rake them forward. But I've noticed if you just sneak this forward like about 1/8 of an inch, burns way better. Way, way, way better. But essentially, guys, I'm stuck with the $5,000 boat anchor, and I can't get any customer service out of them whatsoever. I've never put in any claim other than this, and it's basically about that switch was my complaint. Somebody has to remove this thing. I didn't really want to do it and get that switch fixed. And while I'm out there, you know, maybe we can, you know, work something out with the, you know, the leveling or something of this unit. But it's that switch is what really irritates me. It's because the performance isn't there. The best feature about this unit, where it regulates itself, is non-existent. So, I don't know, guys. I probably ranted enough on this thing, but customer service, I give it a big fat bar soap guy double bird.
So I've created a special ranking just for this, and I have to unfortunately give it the double bird. That's how terrible this is. It's awful.
Basically, it's got one wood burning season in it, which was this year. The first year was just a little bit of experiment and play with or whatever and that kind of thing. So, moving on. This thing, by the time it gets installed, costs you, give or take, about $5,000. If you do it right with a nice stainless liner and all these other things, supposedly doing it right. Well, like I said, this is more of a review on Summit Pacific Energy. Come to find out, I'm not going to name any names, but we're in California, and our local dealer, we only have one in our area. So he installs this thing. I have a disagreement on this guy that he didn't install it right, and we get into it, and basically, long story short, I wind up suing him, and I got the money back for the install and paid for the unit. So we're not off to the best of customer relations here with my local dealer. And the other main reason why we don't have any heat coming out of this unit, or not as much as we should anyways, is because the dealer lied to me, and he cut a hole in the top of the chimney cap to vent heat out of it, and he didn't realize that we have a vented chimney stack in this house. So now our unit is double venting. I can walk up on the top while we're burning a fire, and I can put my hand next to the engineered chimney place vent, and I can feel heat rolling out of that, as it should. It vents between the second and the third layer of our chimney, basically. But this guy was too dumb to realize that, and he didn't even know that it had it until I mentioned it to him, and he goes, oh, gee, maybe I shouldn't have vented the top. So now I have to buy another chimney cap and put that on there and silicone it or glue it down or find some other means of keeping this thing from double venting, because all of our heat is coming right out of the top. And this guy swore to me that the insulation on this unit was so good, when it's running you could put your hand on the back of it and it's not going to be hot to the touch or anything, because all that heat stays inside and blows right out of here. Well, I'll just flat out say it, it's bullshit. And I've been reading up on hearth.com, which is a pretty good site that I've been researching as you know, this has been progressing, and I've been kind of reading up. Other people are absolutely in love with their Pacific Energy Summits, and I wish I had that experience to relay, but I don't. The main thing that I've learned is you should really install what they call a top plate, and I think in our area that's a huge thing, and I mentioned this to them when we were installing it. I said, shouldn't we put a top plate in this thing? You know, it keeps that latent heat from just rolling right up the top. It kind of, you know, holds it inside the lower half of the chimney, so it basically, you know, delays the loss so you can get it out into your house, which is our main problem here. I mean, that's why you buy one of these things, is to heat your house, right? He goes, oh no, that's when he told me that story about you don't need that. You can put your hand on there, and you know, that's you know, you're not going to lose any heat out the top of this thing. It doesn't even get warm back there. That insulation's so good, which it might be insulated. This is one of these new EPA wood burning stoves, and this thing does hold coals overnight. I mean, I'll load this thing up, pack it full for a midnight burn, and I'll come back here, you know, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, a good 12 hours later, and it's got hot coals in the back. You have to rake them all forward. Well, to sum all this up in closing, if you have a competent, trustworthy, experienced, reputable dealer around your area, and you can get a hold of a Pacific Energy and they're not going anywhere, and you maybe have one or two guys in your area that can kind of make the drive over here as backups in case something does happen, and you believe that dealer is going to be able to service you well, go for it. Pacific Energy is probably going to work well in that particular system. But if you only have one dealer and he's a little sketchy, or he's new, or maybe he's going out of business or something along those lines, run like hell and don't give him your money is my advice to you guys.